always been interested in art. Grew up drawing as a kid, and doing the typical stuff, and got into high school and took some photography classes and some ceramics classes, and really enjoyed it. But then when I went to college, I did pre-med, so everything else kind of went out the window. And I took a ceramics class and an intro to art class. That was all I took in college, but it kind of always hung around. And then 13 years later, I finally settled down with a job and kind of got back to it. And so I started just experimenting with things and reading books and just trialing different art techniques essentially. And then there was a gallery downtown that would kind of have an open entry, so I'd try and make a piece once a year or something like that. And then it kind of just evolved from there. Once I started doing that, it became this growing thing that I couldn't stop. I read books. I tried different techniques. I've taken some classes on different calligraphy and printmaking things, letterpress, just where I can, and then I like to incorporate all sorts of different media together. So this piece is called Prone, and it's actually a figural piece. A lot of people don't realize that at first, and again, I kind of like that. I want people to look at it and interpret it the way they want, but there is actually a figure lying prone, lying on her stomach actually, and the leg kind of comes up here. And so, but then it's actually a collage, and so a lot of the color is actually paper overlying all this, and then a layer of paint over it. So it's actually about 3 layers of material. But again, I like that you can look at it and you can see what you think you see or whatever you want to see in it. But for me, it's kind of a celebration of the figure, which as a surgeon and an anatomist, I definitely have respect for that, and just think anatomy is the most amazing thing. So it reflects in a lot of my work. It really it kind of evolved on its own, and I think. So the paper is like a tissue paper, and it started taking on these different colors, and it was just almost one of these happy accidents that happened in the studio where you're doing things and you're like, oh, I love how these the colors overlapping change the whole look of that paper. And so I'd say it's a very experimental work, but for me it helped me move along into other directions with some of my pieces. I'd say a lot of my ideas come from reading, and similar to art, literature kind of fell by the wayside for a long time as well. I didn't have a whole lot of time to read other than medical textbooks and things like that. So as I've not having to study for tests and do all these things all the time, I read a lot more books, and so I read a lot of history, and that brings in a lot of ideas. And so as you kind of read American history. I wasn't really a history student before, but as I read more history, you kind of you realize that we're far from perfect. Like we kind of play ourselves as the hero, but we have a history, and it's just like everybody. We all have our dark sides, I suppose, and so that's kind of where the show kind of originated from. Looking back at slavery history in the United States, that's some of this. I went to a show at Hancher that was kind of a tribute to Martin Luther King Jr. and it was they were just singing all these African American spirituals and things like that. So some of these are in direct response to that, because it was just really a powerful show. But then looking into just politics and things like that. I'm not heavy into politics, but obviously you can't avoid it. So I think it's all kind of come together somewhat because of the current political scene. I also have a lot of figural work, and even though it may not totally tie in, I think it does, because again, we're all imperfect, and so a lot of my work, it's very subtle, kind of the figural part of it, and I kind of like that, it's there, but it's kind of in the background, and again, I think. Again, Perfect Imperfection is the name of the show, and that's kind of what we all are, and as a country we are, and you kind of have to embrace that and say that's what makes us who we are. Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say it's both. I love like kind of rusty junk stuff, and so sometimes I'll just find things, and then it just kind of, I'm like, okay, that's it. But then there's other times where I just have an idea, and it's very sketched out, and I've got a plan, and it just kind of grows from there. So like this piece here, just was an idea in my head for a really long time, and it just kind of sat there because I wasn't quite sure how I was going to do it, and then happened to come across some of the materials, and I was like, bang, and it just clicked, and then I got it done. So yeah, it goes both ways. Whereas some of the other ones are like, I just discovered this little thing at a secondhand store, and it just kind of clicked, and the piece kind of came out of that. So I kind of stumbled upon this cotton bale souvenir at a kind of a secondhand store, and it just really jumped out at me. One just the item itself, but also that it's this souvenir, and again, I at the same time doing a lot of reading and about the history of slavery and things like that, and so I thought, this little thing has a lot of baggage to it. It's because if you know the history, the United States, it's cotton production and fabrics and things like that. A lot of that was based on slavery, and so that was kind of the piece. Kind of jumped out. I said, this isn't just a souvenir. It has weight. It has more to it, and so hence the trap. It's you can't just pick up this thing and think it's just this benign thing. It's got a lot of history, and so the background is actually a story that a slave is telling about bringing their cotton back to the cotton gin, and being scared that they're not going to have as much cotton as they had the day before, and that they're going to get whipped for it. And so to me it's a very powerful piece, and it really just making it was very emotional for me, just because it has that meaning.